You're listening to Trek FM.
Welcome to From There to Here, Trek FM's 50th Anniversary Star Trek Rewatch. We're talking about all 729 Star Trek adventures from Enterprise to Star Trek Beyond and everything in between. I'm your host, Zach Moore, and today I'm joined by...
Lee Hutchison.
How's it going, Lee?
Yes, not too bad. I'm excited to meet my ancestors in this discussion and meet people with funny hats.
Yes, funny hats indeed. Funny hats are not the problem this week. So we're talking about 2 episodes of Star Trek, as we always do. Deep Space Nine's Children of Time, and second will be Voyager's Displaced. So Children of Time, in this episode, the Defiant discovers a planet in the Gamma Quadrant which has its own descendants on it. And it turns out the Defiant had to crash in the past to create the society, so the dilemma becomes if they do not crash again, the society will cease to exist. I gotta tell you, man, this episode is the reason I signed up for this block. This episode is an amazing episode of Star Trek Deep Space Nine, and Star Trek in general. Definitely a top 10 as far as DS9 episodes go in my book, because this I wasn't aware of this episode for a long time. Like, I came to this episode later in Deep Space Nine's run, and it's an episodic episode. It's episodic episode, right? Episodic episode in, like, the arc time of Deep Space Nine. You know, when Deep Space Nine was getting very serialized, it still had these sporadic episodic episodes that were standalone. And this one is one of those, and wow, like, what a great episode this is. And I feel like from the jump, it's just very well crafted. Everything ties together nicely. It's a big sci-fi dilemma. You know, like we were talking about yesterday with Distant Origin. That's like a relatable real-life dilemma. Like, man, you know, science, faith, the establishment. This is like, it's a good story, but it's like we would never be in this situation. Like, oh, what if I don't want to crash our ship because then our ancestors will never be born, or descendants will never be born, right?
Speak for yourself, Zach. It happens all the time here in Scotland.
So anyway, it's just a great episode, and you get the whole journey. Like, there's a lot of stuff. Like, the characters go through a lot of emotions, but they step you through it every step of the way, right? You see why they would make the decisions they would. Every character, like, has their own reaction to this, and it's very true to the character. And at the end, right? God, what a gut punch. But what are your thoughts, Lee?
It's heavy. It's heavy. I remember you saying there that you weren't kind of aware of this episode at the time. This was one episode I always remember I missed it. It used to be on a Monday night 8 p.m. slot here on cable in Scotland. And I missed this episode. I don't know what I was doing, but I always remember I missed this episode. And I remember they called back to it in Call to Arms. And I was like, I don't know. And what this is a reference to. And I eventually saw it someday much later. And I was just blown away by this episode. It is such a stomach punch. Like, yeah, you know, the science, you know, the MacGuffin, don't care. But the power of the emotion and the characters, and, like, it really is a horrible decision to make that I would feel like Miles, to be honest. I think I would have that almost selfish side that I've got a family. I've got a loved one that I've got waiting back home for me. I want to go home. This wasn't meant to happen. We can go back. It's all good. I think I'd be like that, but then I have the same moment he does when I see the little girl. I'm like, oh man, I've got to be a better person. I've got to go back, back in time. I've got to take it. And just the ending is just so powerful. It really just kicks you in the stomach when the planet just erases that it's gone, all because of an act of love. It's incredible. It's not a science mistake. It's not a science issue or something like that. It's an act of love that has doomed thousands of people. That's powerful stuff.
Yeah, I mean, I equate it to, this is Deep Space Nine's City on the Edge of Forever, but Odo being Kirk, like, made the selfish decision, right? He's like, you know what? No, love first. and he saves the Defiant, he saves Kira. And wow, right? Future Odo, right? What I call him like surfer dude Odo, because he's got a real good tan. He's got like a low cut shirt. I mean, he looks very zen. Like he's hanging out.
Always misses the wee Croc shoes, and just he's just crazy.
Exactly, but it's cool to see that they didn't Rene Auger-Benoit. They didn't like make him just human. Like, it was a nice middle ground between his Odo makeup and what he really looks like, and that's a really good look for Odo. I mean, he became a better shapeshifter over the years.
It reminds me of when he plays, like, has one of the Dax symbionts kind of inhabit him, and in season 3, I kind of equated it to being similar to that.
Good call there. there's so much going on here, right? Odo saves the ship because if they don't leave, that's the other thing for the Defiant. Not only that, the real dilemma here is like, if we leave and we don't crash, these people don't exist. But if we stay here, Kira's going to die. And there's only 48, 49 of them. And that really makes it like a really more tough decision, even more so than like the hypothetical, well, I have family back home. Like, this is one of my best friends, my colleagues I've known for years. We could save her if we leave, but she's going to die if we stay. It just, like every angle, you know, if you examine any kind of like time travel plot story like this, usually you can punch up holes in it, like, oh, why don't they just do this? Why don't they just do that? But they covered all the angles here. Like, they really thought this one through, and it's really is a no-win scenario in every sense of the word.
Yeah, and what I like especially about it as well is that they take away that Kira is the one that's going to die, and she's totally fine with it. Like, that tension is taken away, and it's thrown out to someone like, it's actually, you know, Miles is the one that's really pushing it. We can't do this. The others are kind of on the fence, or, you know, believe in staying behind. He's the family man. He's like, nah, I'm not going. End of story. Like, he has no interest in interacting with his family. The contempt he has on his face for this idea that he would cheat on Keiko, and even this kind of alternative reality is, you know, there's so much to play with. And I like that it's down to the family man. It's not just down to, in a way, the medical decision. The medical decision has been taken out of someone's hands. Yep, she's fine with dying. So then it throws out to the other people to debate, well, if she's fine dying, can we get over our reasons to stay, or can we not?
Well, yeah, that whole debate there where they're all sitting on the Defiant Bridge and talking, such a great scene, because even though, like, Sisko's already decided they're not going to go, but he's letting everyone speak their mind, which is another sign of great leadership. They're like, are we even considering this? He's
line,
like,
yeah.
No. But
yeah, I just thought, and it's just the way he just kind of shrugs it. He's got his hand on his cheek. Yeah, just thought I'd let people talk about it. Yeah, like, you could almost just sit there going, you ass. Just like, can you not just like, it's just like you've got this whipped up this tension and argument just for like, yeah.
Right,
just have
exactly. But my favorite exchange here was you know, O'Brien saying, "Oh, we got to go back," and Worf is like, "No, I will stay." And O'Brien's like, "That's easy for you to say. You never even see your son,"
Yeah,
which is such a great cut, right?
I know. He really does earn his nickname Smiley, doesn't he? It's like there's so much, and I like that bit at the end. Like, Worf takes them to the field, and he's like, "I thought we were going to defeat an enemy. The enemy is time." And it's like, that's quite a good line. I can imagine stealing that line and using it and work and claiming it as my own.
Every character has something good to do here, and it's just so good. Such a great episode. Look, if you haven't, I feel like this episode is underrated, falls through the cracks. Not many people talk about it. If you haven't seen Children of Time, make the time to do it, because it's a great episode of Star Trek and one of my favorites of the entire franchise.
Absolutely, it's you won't forget that experience you get at the end of the episode. It truly is like a kick to the stomach, and boy, like, I love that in TV.
Well, moving on to our next episode, Displaced. In this episode, members of Voyager's crew are being switched with a mysterious alien race with funny hats. This is like the least intimidating aliens ever. Like, they look like kind of IT middle management consultants with silly hats. Like, there's no threat whatsoever from them, is there? But it works so well, right? They're so unassuming. Like you first, like, who's this goofy guy? He's like, oh, I was on a walk and here I am, and oh, it's cold, and you're like, well, this guy's harmless, right? But that's the trick. That's a great twist, because they don't come on like some threatening force. They come on like unassuming, like you said, middle management, IT guys. It almost reminds you of that John Travolta meme that's going around just now from Pulp Fiction, where he's just kind of walked in and he looks around going, ooh, and just kind of just strolls down the hall. And like, this is a guilty pleasure episode for me. Like, this episode there's nothing really memorable about it, nothing really great about it. It's perfectly okay, but there's something about it where I find it quite charming to watch. It's just, I could put it on and go, that's quite fine. Yeah, it's quite, some funny moments there, and I don't know what it is, but I still to this day do not know, like, all these years on, why I kind of like this episode. It's just so unassuming, and you could probably put it on in the background and do other things, and it's just a charming little episode. It's a bit of fun. It is, and like I'd say maybe the first third of it is very interesting, because you don't know, it's a mystery. Like, the crew's being switched for one by one with the aliens, and you don't know where they're going, you don't know what they're doing. You never cut to where Voyager crew is going, which is kind of a red flag, right? But I give Janeway a lot of credit here. She's savvy. She's like, look, something's not right here. Like I know these guys seem harmless, but I want them in the cargo bay. I want them kept under guard, because if we extrapolate this, there's going to be more them than there are us on this ship in a few hours, and that there's something wrong there. So, credit there with it, because usually Star Trek crews are so naive. They're like, "Oh, welcome, we're the Federation. Here's a map of our solar system, Archer." Good call, man. But here they're getting savvy to like the fact that maybe all is not as it appears, and I like that. And then so once they get to the zoo, though, or basically at the end, I was like, okay, I guess that works. And then it gets kind of like generic and, like you said, not very memorable. But up until then, it's a very fascinating, engaging mystery. And at the end of the day, it's a fun episode just to see the crew literally out of their element, right?
Yeah, and it's quite fun as well, the idea that they just they don't swap with the crew to hijack the ship to do really anything malicious. They're really just doing it we just use it to protect our space. That they just take these space stations and ships, and you can just imagine them just like hijacking like the Titanic, Voyager, whatever, and just like patrolling their space, just going around. Not they're not using it to get the technology, the weapons, the replicators, anything like that. They're just using it for just like, we just want to kind of defend ourselves, just make sure everything's okay. It's like, yeah, okay, I get that, and it's and it's an inventive idea as well. That Kazon would have had more success in the first 2 seasons of Voyager if they had just kind of pretended that they were just dropping in into the wrong room. That would have made things so much easier to seize Voyager. It's just a nice episode.
Although you mentioned the Kazon and seizing Voyager. Voyager gets taken over a lot. Like, I feel like for a ship that's in another part of space with no other support, this crew gets kicked off their ship and it gets stolen way too often. Between this workforce,
but at least they've not
basics,
been invaded by. At least they've not been invaded by the Ferengi, so we'll remember that one, Mr. Worf.
That's true. Odo didn't forget that one.
No.
Good point.
Another thing that I like about this episode is that it's the continuing blossoming relationship between Paris and B'Elanna Torres. That's at play here as well, and that's like this nice little thread that's going through season 3 and into season 4. So I quite like that, which is really good to see as well, that there's not much in terms of recurring plot lines through season 3, but we've got this relationship which is human and real, and that makes me happy too.
Oh, absolutely. With Tom and B'Elanna, and rewatching these episodes, there a lot of these Voyager episodes I haven't seen in years or I haven't seen at all. So this is very surprising to be like, oh wow, they set up this Tom and B'Elanna stuff. Like, this was playing out over a long period of time, and I give them a lot of credit for that, because you look at spoiler alert down the road when you get to 7 in Chakotay, where there's no setup, and they're like, hey, we're in love, and the series finale, it's like, what? So do more like this, Voyager. Good job. And and the cold open of this episode is actually a follow-up on a scene from yesterday's episode, Distant Origin, because as the dinosaurs are observing B'Elanna and Tom, they have like a bet, and she loses, and he makes her take him to the holodeck and do a Klingon calisthenics program, and then we're seeing them leave the program, and she even mentions, I only did this because that stupid bet. So it's like, wow, Voyager seems to be in this early years very good about micro continuity. Macro continuity, not so much, but well done on the micro continuity. I will give credit where credit is due.
Exactly.
All right, Lee. Well, I think we had a lot of fun talking about these 2 episodes today. Anything else to say?
No, I'm ready to be displaced back to my home.
Oh, it's so cold here and so bright. So
well, you're in Texas. I'm in Edinburgh. That does seem about a fair reflection.
All right, Lee. Well, where can people find you, Lee, when you're not displacing people and taking over ships?
Yeah, of course. You can find me wearing silly hats at Lee_Nostromo, at Star Trek VHS, and you can find me on my own podcast, The Senate Floor, where I do not wear a silly hat, but we talk about movies that feature people wearing hats.
And when I'm not creating Descendants 200 years in the past, you can find me on Twitter at MoronZach. That's MOOREONZACH. And I'm also the host of my own podcast, Always Holding on to Smallville, where we talk about each and every episode of that Young Superman show. We're on Twitter at AlwaysSmallville with 1 S. And that's going to do it for us today. Lee and I will be back tomorrow to talk about 2 more episodes of Star Trek.